Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this replay about some brain exercises you should try. Brain exercise, I put in quotation marks because all memory techniques are brain exercise, are providing you with brain exercise of the highest order because it not only helps improve your memory, but it improves the amount of information that you have in your mind to think about, to go through, to use, which is more brain exercise. So it's a self-growth system. If you're here for the first time, hit the thumbs up, get subscribed to this channel for more live streams if you aren't already. We talk about brain exercises a lot that use your hands and your mind together at the same time. And my name's Anthony Metivier, if you haven't met me before, from magneticmemorymethod.com, and this channel is devoted to helping people learn languages faster, remember passwords, remember vocabulary in your mother tongue, pass exams, all of this stuff. We just love it. We focus on it. We do all that we can as a public service to help bring people to the tradition of memory techniques that's thousands of years old, all beautifully, wonderfully, scientifically verified. And the best part is it teaches you to be the scientist in your own mind. And so if you're joining us now live, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world. If you're watching the replay, you can also type into the discussion below. We'll talk about some brain exercises that you should know and you should use. And these are brain exercises of a very, very special kind that will help you to get more out of your brain and really feel great in your brain and improve your memory, because ultimately that's what it's all about, is improving your memory so that you can learn languages more quickly, so that you can discover the abilities and the confidence that come from being able to learn people's names quickly, remember numbers, and apply that to achieving the goals that you want in life. So Sandra's here from Northern California. Hello, Sandra. Thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, thumbs up, hit that thumbs up, and let me know where you are in the world. This is also the opportunity for you to ask any questions you have about brain exercise and memory, and please do take advantage of that opportunity. These things are always best live, though if you are watching the replay, you can also type in the chat below. So in terms of brain exercises, one of the first things that I will say is you want to create time and space for brain exercises. This is a huge thing. Now, you can use brain exercises at any point in time, whenever you want to do this. So you can do it in busy cafes, you can do it while you're walking down the street, you can do it while you're at work, you can do it while you're cooking, you can do it while you're shopping. All these kinds of things are possible, but you also want to create the time and the space around this. And a book that I've been reading really brings home just how important this is. And if you'd like me to share with you what that book is, then we're going to need to see some thumbs up here, because we're really quiet on the thumbs up end, and I'll share with you that book. So it's really, really important. Time and space. Okay, we got the one thumbs up. Awesome. Finally, everybody's awake. I was going to test these things. It's always funny when things are quiet. So keep on showing me that you're engaged. Let me know where you are in the world. Marichella's here from Texas, McAllen, Texas. Always good to see you. Hola, ¿cómo estás? So really happy always to get the engagement and so forth. But this book that I started reading, now I'm sorry, Karsten's here. Grüße aus Mexico. Gerne mit dem Daumen, denn du verdienst. Wunderschön. Vielen Dank. Ja, ich habe viele Daumen verdient. Das ist richtig. Richtig. So we're speaking a little German there. James says, LOL, everyone's awake. And Sandra says, is it a new book? Yes, it's a new book here I'm going to share with you. Keep them thumbs up coming. And or the Daumen. And unfortunately, we're on this technology that Apple hasn't caught up with yet, that you don't mirror video, but it's going to be backwards. But I'll show you the book. But this is really, really important, because I was just talking about how you need to make time and space for brain exercises, even though you'll also brain exercises wherever you are in the world. You want to have space for it. And this book that I'm reading now just drives this home. And actually, it is filled with evidence and proof and stories that demonstrate something I've been talking about for well over a year and a half now, which is digital fasting as a way of treating and solving and curing digital amnesia, or what's sometimes called the Google effect, or what's sometimes called digital dementia. And so this book is called Lead Yourself First. I know that's backwards there. And it's called Inspiring Leadership Through Solitude And what it is about is the importance of having time away from devices, away from any sort of distractions, away from social media, away from the internet, paradoxically what we're doing now, time away from this. And over the weekend, I went out Saturday afternoon and most of Sunday, and no devices, nothing whatsoever. I had a book in my hand called Under the Lino by Kaylee Jeffrey, and I made a dedicated brain exercise, essentially. Just keeping yourself away from the devices is brain exercise, and starting to notice how the mind works, because you're reaching for things, or you're thinking, oh, I could look that up, which is the Google effect, and then no, I can't look it up because I haven't got anything. It is in and of itself, it has become a brain exercise to digital fast. But anyway, this book, which is by, I haven't memorized their names yet, but we can think here as a brain exercise about how we would do this, Raymond M. Kethledge and Michael S. Irwin. And so this just came to me yesterday, Sunday, for some reason. The books were being delivered on a Sunday here in Australia, which is amazing. But it came, and I just thought, this is so incredible. I didn't really realize that when it said inspiring leadership through solitude, that it was going to be all about isolation and removing yourself from the computer for extended periods of time. But that is essentially what it's about. And it says here that solitude is a state of mind, a space where you can focus on your own thoughts without distraction, with a power to bring mind and soul together in clear-eyed conviction. And like a great wave that saturates everything in its path, however, handheld devices and other media now leave us awash with the thoughts of others. We are losing solitude without even realizing it. So this is a practice. So basically this book is just preaching to the converted, because I've been doing digital fasting now for about a year and a half, and I did it before in different ways. But it is in and of itself brain exercise that is so powerful, because you start to pay attention to how you are being directed to use media on autopilot. You just reach for it, and when you don't have it there, you're then paying attention to it. But this is not what I would call dedicated brain exercise. This is more what I would call passive brain exercise, that happens merely by virtue of having changed the conditions of the environment. It's very interesting. You also start to notice how other people are just enslaved to this. They've got multiple devices going on. If they've got their laptop on, they've got multiple tabs open, and they've got the devices, and so they're switching back and forth. They're not really paying attention, and you can just see their minds off in different places. It's not to judge or anything like that, but it's just an observation that you'll make if you yourself engage in digital fasting and hang around with people in those situations. So very, very interesting. In any case, so thanks everybody who's here so far. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world and what you're doing, what you're thinking. And I appreciate everybody who has been saying hello in different ways around the world. So that's very good. So brain exercise. We've got the foundations here. We need to make time for it. We need to make a place for it. And so I have some places where I like to do my brain exercises, typically seated on the floor, cross-legged. And one of the things that I do as brain exercise pretty much every morning is to memorize cards. Memorizing cards is a great brain exercise. Why? Because it does a number of things at once. It uses number memory, it uses serial positioning, it uses recency effect, primacy effect, and it uses the recall rehearsal in order to get more pieces of information into short-term memory being manipulated and then recalled, strengthening the memory palace and strengthening the understanding of the memory palace, strengthening magnetic imagery inside of memory palaces, and all levels of multiple detailed processing. But you might not start with cards. You might need brain exercises that really, really set the bar a little bit lower, a little bit more achievable. And so we'll give you some ideas for what you can do on today's live. So if that sounds good to you, hit the thumbs up, let me know in the chat. And just generally, if it's safe for you to do so, you're not driving or anything like that, have you done brain exercises before? If so, what brain exercises have you done? Love to hear from you in the chat and get a sense of what those brain exercises are like for you, and get some interaction going here, because that's always best. If you're watching the replay, shoot down in the discussion there whatever you may have to respond in terms of brain exercises that you've encountered before and what those have been like for you. If you had to scale it between 1 to 10, what would those be? And let's get some discussion going here. So Sandra says, when you use cards daily, do you ever overlap with previous lists of cards? No. And that's a great question, Sandra, because one of the things that people really ask a lot is, they ask it in different ways, but they ask, do you get confused if you reuse memory palaces? And if you are using memory palaces, do they get used up? Do they somehow get used up? And this is another reason to do this form of brain exercise, is because it teaches you how to deal with overlap if it happens, and then how to eliminate overlap, because it never should be an issue if you know what you're doing. And second of all, you never use up memory palaces. It's also a great way to break in, so to speak, multiple memory palaces, which is another thing that you need to be doing. By the way, creating memory palaces is brain exercise. So create more memory palaces and you'll already get memory exercise. Why? Because you're combining spatial memory with autobiographical memory, or spatial memory plus spatial mapping plus autobiographical memory. And just mining through that territory is itself a kind of brain exercise. But Sandra, to your question, which is a very, very good one, the practice is exactly to go through the issues that may arise from overlap, learn what that is for you, because it doesn't matter how it is for anybody else. It matters how it is for you, and then learn how to deal with it if it happens. And so I've never had a problem with it because of the level of practice, and it's mental management, and it also helps with these things like ugly sister effect, when different kinds of information compete for space in your mouth, like happened on the last live stream with Frederick Jameson. I remember it was just like Jameson something, and then just knowing how to let it go and then come back later. So that's really important. Let me check in with the chats here. More to say on that, Sandra. We'll probably pick it up as we go along, but in general, overlap is not an issue, but it's because of the practice of basically erasing overlap. James says, can you do this on a bed? I asked because I have a bad back and can't sit on the floor. James, absolutely. I just happen to sit on the floor, and it's because it's part of my morning rituals. So Brundhiver is here. Awesome. Thanks for being here. And if I remember correctly, that is Forest Strategy, Brundhiver. And that was something that it was great brain exercise for me. I remember you mentioning Forest Strategy, and then I was encoding this along with Brundhiver, and Brundhiver says yes, awesome. So thumbs up everybody to Brundhiver for being Forest Strategy and for being here and for my memory. Woohoo! Great, a win. But yeah, James, you can sit in a chair. I'm sat on a bench right now, so you could sit on a bench. It's almost like a Dr. Seuss poem. You could sit in a chair. You can sit on the floor, you can sit on a bench, you can sit on a door. You can sit on a door, or you can sit on your head. All that matters is that you're not dead, okay? So just use this anywhere, while on a walk, while you're giving a talk, while you're putting on socks on top of a rock. You know, like you can just do all kinds of stuff with this. Oh, see, more brain exercise, make up poetry. Great, so I didn't even anticipate talking about making poetry as brain exercise, but that works. So thank you for that great question. But yeah, you can do it anywhere. I just happen to sit. And one of the things about sitting that's really important to understand with things like meditation and whatnot is that the reason why meditation developed sitting on floors is because they didn't have furniture. So there's nothing special about sitting on floors. I just happen to like sitting on the floor for doing this because I have this romanticized image sometimes about sitting on the floor for meditation, but it's not really true. You can just do all this stuff laying down. You can do it walking. You can do it talking. You really can do it on a rock while putting on socks if you want to do the Dr. Seuss version of things. So great questions, but yeah, never mystify sitting down or lying down or anything like that, James. So great questions. And but that said, one of the things you want to think about if you are doing cards is how are you going to lay out the cards? Because, you know, if you want to have all 52 visible, well, then you're going to need the space for that. I don't know if you want to have all 52 visible or not, but you want to think about that, because when I practice in different ways at different times, I will have sometimes columns visible, like 4 to 5 at a time, on in front of me, to actually emulate some of the things that I'm doing in my mind. So that's something to keep in mind and consider. But we wanted to start with some base level, but please do keep your questions coming and your comments and your responses. Really appreciate that. Hit the thumbs up if you're just joining us. Let me know where you are in the world and how things are with your memory practice. Maricella says, most of the time I'm busy, but I try to take time off. Great. I mean, trying to take time off and just doing it are two different things. Try, of course, is that great Yoda moment. There is no try, right? Do or do not. There is no try. You're going to either be the iron brain or not. So trying is really not an option here. We're just going to make the time, and we're going to do it. And so these morning rituals are very important. It doesn't have to be the morning, but I highly recommend that you pick a time and you show up to that time and you do it consistently. All right, so all that said, some brain exercise that you can do that are just kind of like entry-level things that don't require a whole lot of learning in advance. Let's start with that. And if you're joining us again, let me know. Take that opportunity to get engaged, open different parts of your brain through discussion, even if it's just, hell yeah, I'm ready, or a question. Abdullah just posted a question that we'll get to in a minute here. Hit the thumbs up, get your body involved. I don't need this for my ego, but it is encouraging you to be involved, to be deeper engaged, to unlock parts of your brain, and the chemicals will be there for you as a result. And if you don't think that involving your body in discussion is going to help your brain learn more and get you more involved, then I encourage you to test your assumption on that, because I wish that I had been more involved when I was in school back in the day. So yeah, the first thing that I would suggest is something that is called you could, like, it's totally a bit arbitrary, but you could just pick anything, but like +3 - 7. So pick any 3-digit number and then add 3 and then -7, and just go through that as long as you can tolerate until that you get bored or tired or make a mistake or want to try something else. It could be the +4 - 8 exercise, whatever you want. But basically you'd pick a 3-digit number like 363, you'd add 3 to that, and then you'd -7. Then whatever that digit is, add 3 and then -7. It's important to start with a 3-digit number so that you have enough to work with. But you could try starting with a 1-digit number and then work with decimals and negatives and all that sort of stuff if you want. It's up to you. But the whole point is you pick a number, you add and subtract from it, and just mentally manage this. Very, very simple brain exercise. That's a lot of fun. And what you're doing in doing this, and why you would want to do this, is because it's allowing you to juggle multiple pieces of information in a linear, alinear fashion. So you have the linear fashion of you're doing it in real time, but you have to sort of juggle what you did in the past and what you're going to do in the future at the same time that you're managing what you're doing in the moment, right? So you're getting multiple levels of processing going on at the same time, and some skills of numeracy that you're exercising. So it's really, really cool for all the things that it's doing. If you want, you can also try and track this in a memory palace, so that, let's say it was 363 that you started with, you could memorize the number that you started with, and then you could go to the next magnetic station in your memory palace and memorize the digit that you came up with for -3, and then go to the next one and memorize the digit that you came up with for +7, and progressively move along through this way. That's a little bit more intermediate and requires that you have a proper memory palace, and it requires that you would have the major method, but you can just start simple with the +3 - 7 or the +4 - 8 as you please. Let me know what you think of that. Hit the thumbs up, and let me hear some comments here. Abdullah says, can I use memory palaces to learn things quickly? Abdullah, absolutely, yes, you can. Thank you for that question. And if you have any more detailed questions around that, let me know. But the answer is yes. And whenever people start questions with can, then usually that means that yes, you can. You just have to get started and try and experiment. And the best way to do that is to do it now. Don't wait, don't hesitate. Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, take the free course, or just dive right into the masterclass. Both those options are there. And you'll get a great, wonderful set of brain experiences and exercises just by creating memory palaces. Because the ultimate memory exercise and brain exercise that will last the longest for your life is the memory palace, because you're doing all of these things. You're doing mental rotation, you're exercising spatial mapping and spatial memory, you're exercising autobiographical memory, episodic memory, figural memory, semantic memory, blah, 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 all these memories, procedural memory. It's just beautiful. Beautiful, all of the things that come together in one fell swoop. It's the same way that golfing is just like, just looks like this one movement, but it's using your spatial perception, it's using velocity, it's using force, it's using every muscle in your body, it's using all kinds of things all at once. It's really powerful. All right, so let's check in here. Maricela says that she likes to go to the South Padre Island to take a rest, talking with friends. Muy bien, excellent. Great. Reclaiming Life is here. Hello, Reclaiming Life. Hello, Anthony. William here. William, good to see you. I was just listening to one of your podcasts and realized I was not subbed to the YouTube channel. Well, I'm glad that you're here now. By the way, if you're here and you're not subbed, hit the subscription button and hit that bell. And even if you're already subscribed, hit that bell icon anyway, because in the permission-based universe, you gotta like tell them that you want to be notified. And even then. But that's probably for the best at the end of the day. We only want people who want to be notified anyway, right? Because we want to be the welcome guest and not an intrusive pest when we go in and talk about these wonderful brain exercises and help people out and get them engaged, get them excited, get moving. So hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Let me know where you are in the world. And thank you, William, for being here to help us all reclaim our life. So Bruntiver, Forest Strategy says, nice cup. Thank you. It is a nice cup indeed. Indeed. And if any of you don't have your Magnetic Memory Method cup yet, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/swag, SWAG, give you a free video that teaches you how to use these as devices in memory palaces in a very clever and unusual way. And there's a condition there, though. I want to see the picture of you with this cup. Now, I know I'm reducing the amount of people who will do that by having all kinds of conditions on it, but that's just the way that it rolls. So go to magneticmemorymethod.com/swag, SWAG, send me a picture of you with the Magnetic Memory Method cup, then you will unlock a very special video. And that'll be awesome. So Reclaiming Life says, love that exercise, and I've since first heard it in your Brain Games podcast. Yeah, exactly. So that's something that has been shared before. And one of the things you'll notice is that, we need sometimes multiple exposures, multiple touches. It just doesn't all sink in all at once. So one of the best things to do is make sure you're plugged in at all possible levels, because there's challenges with memory techniques, there's challenges with brain exercise, but the more that you see it from different angles, the more you are finding your way into actually taking action. So the ideal picture is, hey, there's this great thing, I'm gonna go do it right now. Then you do it, then you get the results. That doesn't happen for all people, not even for myself. In some of the things that I've learned in order to get better, and I mean, it's just a very good thing that I impose upon myself multiple touches to various things, is that some things take longer to sink in than others. And there's certain bits of wisdom in all kinds of training that I've had to hear multiple times in order to finally get it into action, and I understand this. So the podcast is supplemented by the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is supplemented by the podcast, and the masterclass is supplemented by all these things, and these things supplement the masterclass, and it all weaves together as ongoing training in order to help things sink in wherever you're at. It's a big system that informs itself in a self-referential system of encouragement, knowledge, practice, going in and doing things to get you to take action. Because this is a skill that is learned through action. We can sit there and be like, oh yeah, then we memorized this card, and da 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 da. But if you don't actually get the training, and if you don't actually do stuff with the training, who knows? Nothing's going to happen. You won't have that transformation. But if we can just get you to get started anywhere, then that is like pushing open the door and the ray of light coming through. And then that gives us the opportunity to push the door open more, and more rays of light come through. Some people, they just learn these techniques and boom, they kick the door all the way open, wide open, and they're in. And we know this. We know people have gone and won world memory championships within 6 months of training because the door got kicked open that far the first time. Other people, they might compete a few times. So we're going to have a great podcast guest coming up soon who didn't win the first time in the competitive rounds that he was in, but he did win later, and he learned so much from being on the path that it gave him that advantage for the next time. And Kevin Richardson, he was on the podcast. He didn't quite gel with the memory palace technique, but he came back a year later, and the next thing you know, he is memorizing 30 kanji a day. So there's different paths of entry and portals of entry for everybody. So I'm glad that you've heard that before, William. So now I gotta remember for sure that William and Reclaiming Life are the same dude, in the same way that Brunheimer and Force Strategy are the same people. Great, I love that. Sandra says, may we have some more elementary exercises, please, like the 3+7? Yes, these are coming up. And as William Reclaiming Life mentioned, there's a podcast episode all about that, which is just search magneticmerrymethod.com and brain exercises. Let's get some more thumbs up for more brain exercises. Who wants them? Let's see if we can get some more interaction from you all. If there's 12 people here and we don't have 12 thumbs up, let's move to that. Come on, guys. Boo, boo, boo. Again, it's not for my ego, but it is telling the Google robots something. Which is fun to see if we can tell more Google robots more things. And if we can't, whew, terrible, terrible. Another elementary brain exercise really is to learn how to juggle. So that's pretty simple. These are my wonderful Think Buzan juggling balls that I got from Tony Buzan directly. Very, very amazing and fun. And that's using your body, and you may have seen the video where I am juggling and working at the alphabet backwards. Now this is not exactly an elementary brain exercise, but it is one. We'll get to some more memory elementary exercises in a minute, but the alphabet backwards is an important one because it'll do a lot for you. And one of the things that it does for you is in the juggling of information that you already know, right? There's a lot to this. So whenever you can take information that you already know and manipulate it mentally through mental rotation, then you're getting great brain exercise. So it doesn't have to be the alphabet, but it could be, let's say you know the lyrics to a song, right? Well, one thing that you could do as brain exercise is you could recite the lyrics of the song, but suppress every other word. Right? So, let me think of a song that I know where we could try this. And this is something I'm not well practiced at. This is just an idea that came to me right now, but it's related to the alphabet exercise. Well, let's just use the alphabet for now. So you could think of the alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Well, then you could go A, C, E, G, right? And you're skipping every other letter. That's great brain exercise. And you go from the beginning of the alphabet to the end. And then you could do it backwards. So Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, I screwed it up there. Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. So then you could go Z, X, well, whatever, I'm trying to perform here live, but Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, and now you can see it's like brain exercise, and it's really, really important to explore this in solitude and then work as a skill. So I've never done the alphabet backwards, skipping every other letter, but I can see how the level of challenge would be. And the way that I would start is not verbally. What I would do is I would actually write it out. So verbal is like too much of a challenge. I just felt it there myself. But I would then start, and I would start to draw it. So I'd go Z, X, B, T. See, that's even just mimicking drawing it out reduces the cognitive load, but still gives the brain exercise. So it's much more manageable. And then I would work towards doing it verbally. And then I would take a song that I know word by word. So, Ich werde in die Tennen gehen, dahin, wo ich sie zuletzt gesehen. And then, so, Ich in Tenne, right? And so I'm skipping every other word. And then think of how you could get through an entire song that way. And you might want to start with writing it out that way. And then see if you could do it backwards. So say the words backwards in your mind or writing it out, and then skip the words backwards. I think that, wow, man, it just feels so good already. My brain is popping with the possibilities for this. So give that a try as maybe a little bit more intermediate. But we've got some other more simpler brain exercises coming here. Let's see here. What do we got here? Reclaiming Life Williams says, it's even better this way than how you explained it there with +3 times -7 times. Oh, right. Yeah, so you can do it 3 times forward and 7 times backwards. That's maybe more of the intermediate level. So what I meant there is, let's say you're doing the +3 -7. So instead of +3 and then -7, you can do +3, +3, +3, which is +3 3 times, and then do -7 7 times. You could also reverse it, right? You could do +3 7 times and then -7 3 times. Anyway, the point is not so much the exercises in themselves, it's the exercises plus variations, because you always want to keep in mind the challenge frustration curve, right? So alphabet backwards is like one level, and then you get maybe frustrated with that, and then you add more things. And I just discovered, wow, so skipping all those other every other letter backwards is like a greater challenge. And then I'd be like, okay, so that frustrated me, so I got to scale it back, maybe do it on paper, then return to do it mentally. Really amazing to keep that in mind, and will be very, very helpful for you. Always think of, okay, where am I being challenged? And then where am I being frustrated? And make sure you scale back from frustration, but never go away from challenge. That's one of the keys here. So Maricella says, I enjoy drawing and painting. Awesome. So drawing and painting are really great. And then the question is the same. Where's the sweet spot between challenge and frustration? Because in drawing, you may not, maybe you don't want to use it as a brain exercise, but if you want to use it as a brain exercise, then you need to challenge yourself. And the more you challenge yourself, then the more you skirt and you risk getting into frustration. But you don't want to be frustrated. They really got to improve this app. I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes I click the wrong thing and it goes nuts. But yeah, same thing. If you're going to use drawing for brain exercise, make sure you're challenging yourself. Otherwise, it's just a pastime. And pastimes that you use for relaxation, nothing wrong with that. But it's not brain exercise without a challenge, right? Reclaiming Life says that the Google bots just got the thumbs up. Thank you for that. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up and let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what you think about brain exercises. What are your experiences with them? And if you have any questions. So William says, as a former street performer as well, if people can't get juggling balls, the cross balls work great for juggling, both normal, and they are a great weight for contact juggling. Awesome. That's great. And awesome that you were a street performer as well. Cool. I love street performers. They're amazing. The courage and the tenacity and the audience management that goes on. Like, you wouldn't think of this, but there's so much going on in their brains. It's unbelievable. They're really interesting people to study, especially when they have really good audience management. And you'll tell if you get into it. If you do some studies of street performance, there's some incredible things. And the fact that they are not only performing but managing the audience at the same time, and then doing the business of the performance at the same time, which is part of audience management, but it's also its own little special skill and its own realm. such admirable people. You should go up to them and give them some of your dough, because they have earned it in so many ways. Unbelievable, unbelievable what an art it is. And you know, they might not be they might not be super skilled at it yet, but they're working, and they deserve your attention, and they deserve your support, because this is one of the most unbelievable things that they are doing. And it doesn't matter whether they're musicians or jugglers or magicians or whatever they might be doing. Like, they are there, and they have put themselves out there, and just on that alone they deserve respect and admiration and support, even if it's just a kind word, you know, sometimes, or eye contact with a smile, just to be a human, acknowledging and accepting another human being and their efforts to survive and thrive. And they're trying to give you something at whatever way they can in that moment, and it's absolutely incredible, and they really deserve your acknowledgement. So I love street performers of all stripes. So Marichelle says, I painted my memory palace, but I have multiple activities during the day that I cannot finish the study of my math book. Yeah, you know, one of the things is that there's so many competing things in life, and it's like the crabs in the bucket, right? There's all kinds of crabs in the bucket, and one of them gets to the top and is about to pull itself out, and then the other crab pulls it down. So you got to think about how to design things so that that crab can actually get out of the bucket and into the world, and that these other crabs are actually pushing it out of the bucket instead of pulling it back down, because otherwise nothing gets done. So design your bucket in such a way that the crabs can actually get out and not be a self-interfering system. You want a mutually self-reinforcing system, and this is possible to do. And one of the things that I would say that is the most amazing ladder that helps crabs get out of buckets is a dedicated memory palace strategy and use of it in laser targeted ways, so that you can learn and remember information quickly, so you have it, and then you never have to have competition in your mind for, like, oh, what was that password again, and wasting a bunch of time going and looking for it, and so on, or whatever that information is. That's a great way of making sure that more crabs get out of the buckets without interference. So when you go to the masterclass, for example, pick a course and study it from beginning to end, and don't stop until you're finished, and do all the exercises and develop the skill, and then use those skills to help you memorize whatever is in the books, rather than trying to study a little bit about the memory techniques and study a little bit about the information. Get the tools first, get them completely and thoroughly, and then every book you read from then on in, you will just have these tools to work with. You'll remember more, and you won't have competition in your head between the tools of learning and the actual material of learning, because you'll have the tools of learning and you'll use them to rapidly absorb the information from those books. Very, very important and powerful principle. So thanks for mentioning that, because you can resolve the competition by just mastering the fundamentals first. So Brundiver for Strategy says, I made an alphabet memory palace today for remembering serial numbers with letters. Put in my elementary school, found it very easy to do and useful. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that for Strategy. By the way, Brundiver here and Marichella, these are masterclass members, and so they may be making references to things caught in there. Oh man, I better be careful. I keep hitting the wrong buttons, and I don't want to accidentally remove anybody's comment, but these are amazing things that I really appreciate when you guys show up and support the community and help everybody else grow. Because I think of this as our magnetic dojo, where all people, all students and teachers are teachers and students to one another. So it's always great when you are able to be here. Tea Time is here. Hello, Tea Time. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world with your comment. And Reclaiming Life Williams says, definitely love joint shows with others. Amazing. Yeah, any sort of street performance and when people work together and mentor each other, definitely. Sandra says, the exercises with their variations are exactly what I wanted. Something simple I could do driving, then ways to make more challenging. Thank you for responding to our questions. No problem, Sandra. Keep those questions coming. That's what this is for, this public service, to bring the community together to just share the values and create fluency and literacy, perhaps better said, about memory techniques and what they are and how to use them in brain exercises, and knowing that the ultimate brain exercises are the memory techniques themselves and the management of our time and energy. So that's really important. And Michael Swain is here, another Masterclass member. Excellent. Thanks for being here, Michael. Hit the thumbs up for all the Memory Masterclass students here today. Well, more like co-fellow students, members. Hey, Anthony, Michael says, good to be here. As awesome as brain exercises are, I prefer to do those exercises with material I'm wanting to devour instead of treating them as just exercise. Exactly right, yeah. And, you know, this is one of the things that the Memory Palace will do, is it will turn everything you're learning into brain exercise because of how you are harnessing the primacy effect, the recency effect, the serial positioning effect, and, you know, the von Restorff effect, and so on and so on. All these wonderful effects because of what they do to tap into all of your levels of memory and all of the different chemicals in your brain and fuse it all together into one singular act of mental fitness. So this is why to Maricela I suggested really not putting things in a situation where, you know, having to read the math books competes with completing the acquisition of the Memory Palace skills and the Magnetic Memory Method, because really all that brain exercises, as Michael is saying, can just be adequately and more than sufficiently and very, very efficiently done with the material itself. So when I'm reading this book, for example, I'm going to be getting the ultimate brain exercise when I remember facts, dates, the names of the authors and so forth. And, you know, we can just start to think Raymond M. Kethledge. So brain exercise instantly. So who do I know who's named Raymond? Well, you know, a few people come to mind. Everybody loves Raymond, right? Remember that show? And then there's Ray Edwards, I think of, Ray Keane, OBE, right? So I can now start to put these people together. Do I need to memorize the initial M? Well, let's say that I do. So I start to think, and here's brain exercise. I'm going into my memory, right? I'm thinking, oh, well, the Fritz Lang movie, M. Perfect, right? So now we're gonna have like Raymond Keane, and he's playing chess with Fritz Lang, and Kethledge is the last name. So Keth, that's kind of unusual, right? Keth. So the first thing I got to do is not think, oh, that's hard. I have to think, what works here? What's possible here, right? So Melissa Etheridge comes to mind. Well, that's not Keth, but Eth, right? And ethanol, right? So starting to work here, thinking in possibilities instead of getting frustrated, because it is kind of weird. Kethledge, what the heck am I going to do with this? But by just jumping over that and going straight to possibility, Melissa Etheridge comes in, ethanol, Neil Young comes to mind for some reason. So, oh, maybe Neil Young and Melissa Etheridge are spiking ethanol with ketamine. Kethledge. See? So now ketamine is much more close to Keth than anything. But I had to get there through an unusual means, right? Which first came with overcoming the objection and then just letting the mind wander to alternatives, and then all of a sudden we get to exactly the closest possible thing. What could be more close to Keth than ketamine, right? The drug. So now, ledge. So we have to think about a ledge. So now, Raymond Keane is playing chess with Fritz Lang, who directed M, and they're having a fight with the chessboard, and Raymond smashes it over this barrel filled with ketamine over a ledge, right? And now we don't really need Melissa Etheridge and Neil Young, although we could have them there, and just stick that in a memory palace. I'm actually building it in a memory palace as we speak, but, you know, There we go. And that should be pretty good. So Raymond M. Kethledge. And at first when I saw that name, I was really like, what the heck am I going to do with this? But sometimes the first job is to just acknowledge that feeling and then go for the next possible thing. William Reclaiming Life says, Heath Ledger snorting Special K. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, Special K. Yeah. Because that's another way of thinking of it. Vitamin K sometimes too, I hear it called. Anyway. So that's how we can, that's all just beautiful brain exercise in and of itself. So, and to Michael Swain's point from earlier, this is now taking information that we want to learn and using the brain exercises as memory techniques and the memory techniques as brain exercise. They're the same. They're the same. So thumbs up to Michael for that. If you haven't hit the thumbs up yet, do so now and let me know if you're just joining us where you are. Brunheimer says, thanks for the tip about juggling. We'll try that. Excellent. Thank you for thanking William, Reclaiming Life. And always good when you are able to help each other. Oh, Reclaiming Life, William is in the masterclass as well. Thank you. Thumbs up to all of you. Amazing. This is like the dojo office hours, and love for us to come together to share the literacy of brain exercises and memory to the world together. Great. Brunheimer says, I found a very fun technique to unload my working memory. It is free writing. You just have to write anything that comes to your mind, even if it looks like you have Tourette syndrome when rereading. That's a great strategy also. You know, some people have called that the brain dump or the mind dump. And one of the things that you're doing there as a brain exercise is you're relieving space, you know? If you think of the 80-20 rule and how that so much of the room that a garden needs in order for the plants to grow, there's so much what you would think of as redundant space. But for the success of those plants to grow, you actually need space between the rows, and you need space for things to come to their full fecundity, right? And if you don't have that space, which may seem redundant and inefficient, well then those things don't have room to grow. And so your mind is sometimes filled with so much pressure, and you just need to relieve it in order for space to grow. Same thing, people complain about books, oh, like the introduction was so long, or videos, and oh, there's so much throat clearing at the beginning, and yada, yada, yada. They're complaining for nothing and for naught, because our brains need that. The speakers need it, our brains need it. We need room for the ideas to actually circulate. If it was just full ideas, full on. Look, The Secret of Life can be written on an index card this big, right? But nobody would be able to ever understand it. It'd just be hard, raw data. It needs to be embedded in a field of what Jordan Peterson might call nestic memory, right? It needs to be in a field of what you would call redundancy. And years ago, one of my best professors told me that, you know, most of information is redundant, and we need that redundancy. If we don't have redundancy, we're lost. So extend your patience to the world when people are thinking out loud, or when you're thinking out loud, and so forth, because it's actually needed. It's built into the nature of things. And one of the great hallmarks of a great student is patience and tolerance for the stuff that doesn't seem relevant, because the reality is that anything that is relevant will require 80% or more of irrelevance. And you're just sifting, sorting, screening, patiently allowing all that redundancy to be the soil in which the plants do the work. And it's the same thing with memory palaces. It's the reason why we recommend to approach books and memorizing books as we do, because your brain will make a lot of the connections on autopilot on its own if you allow for redundancy, if you allow a particular procedure and process to do this. And it's the same with almost everything in life. It's very, very important. So never complain about all this sort of stuff that a lot of people do. So let's see here. We got some great chats coming in here. But thank you for that, Brunheimer, for strategy. And by the way, another brain exercise, when people tell me that they have alternate names or their first names, you can, along with me, memorize those other names, because I'm going to keep on saying, you know, Reclaiming Life William, But you could just follow along and associate Reclaiming Life with William as a brain exercise, or as of last time, Bruntiver, you could memorize that and associate it with forest strategy, and so on. There's other opportunities to do that. But we can do brain exercise right now just by tracking together the people that we're here with now. So Reclaiming Life, William continues, free writing is amazing. Writing on paper in general, in any way, is so much better than most people realize these days. Absolutely. There's so many muscles that are activated. I lost my pencil here. So many muscles that are activated when you write on paper that are not in the digital realm, and it's just such great benefit. I also suggest writing with pencil rather than pen, which I do a lot. Very, very important. Bruntiver for strategy adds, yes, when I do that before meditation, it helps me focus and reduce a lot of the random thoughts that I otherwise would have. Yeah, I often will pause a meditation. If I'm having like a really busy day, I will go and get this. And then whatever thoughts keep coming, instead of labeling them and so forth, I'll just get rid of them by making a note. Now you might think, well, that's not real meditation, that's not really focusing, and I would say nonsense. This is actually just pause meditation, and just deal with whatever's there. It keeps coming up in consciousness, and so acknowledge it, put it down, and go, or memorize it. But sometimes even memorizing it, then you would just be like starting to go into recall rehearsal and reasserting it in memory when you want to be meditating. So just get rid of it, let it go, and then brain dump around it if you have to, do some bullet points, and then get back to meditation, free and clear. So it's perfectly valid. I don't do it all the time, but if I'm really just not settling down, then that's a strategy for getting back and settling down. It's very, very good. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Thank you for all the chats, really appreciate these. Bruntiver, or Reclaiming Life Williams says, to Bruntiver for strategy, to help with meditation focus, use a bell or chime that you sound, or an app that is just an occasional bell and not guided. Yeah, these are all interesting ideas too. I mean, one of the things you can do is something I heard from Tim Ferriss was, whatever amount of time you think that you can meditate for, set a timer and set it for 2 minutes less, or a certain amount of period less than you think you can meditate for. That's been useful for me at different points in my adventure. I don't set timers anymore. I haven't for a long time. Although, that said, the new Waking Up app is finally available. So I broke my app rule and have put that on recently, just to so I can do a review of it. And it is timed meditations by virtue of him saying this meditation will be for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever the case may be. And really quite interesting. And Sam Harris is right. Even if you are an experienced meditator, it's useful to go through guided meditations from other people. So I will probably do a podcast all about the Waking Up app. So that would be good. Great suggestion, William. Thanks for that. Reclaiming Life, William continues. I prefer simply using a fine point pencil for things I know may be temporary, otherwise a fountain pen rather than ballpoint. Interesting. And Reclaiming Life asks, why do you strongly suggest pencil? There's a few reasons why I would suggest pencil. One of which, and by the way, I should clarify that, a pencil without an eraser. Because one of the things for me that's so important is that I want to practice a bit of penmanship with a pencil, but also not have an erasing thing. So this partly has to do with my own drawing practice and my own challenges, which is to weave in quote-unquote mistakes, work with mistakes, but also keep a record of any changes that I make. So rather than erase the record or scratch them out or whatever, deal with the record. And this has to do sometimes too with the fact that like when I'm doing verbatim memorization and I write it out verbatim, if there's an error there, then I actually want to know what that error was. Not erase it, but actually have a record of it and work at thinking about the kinds of errors that are made so that I can track them and develop both an intuition for what those errors might be in the future so I don't make them again, but also just see a sense of progress. So that's another reason. Also, I just like pencils better than pens. I'm lefty, so I I mean, I can write with both hands to a certain degree, but I prefer to write with my natural inclination for left hand. But if I write with ink, because I'm left-handed, I'll often smudge myself a lot, and that's harder to wash out than pencil, because I'll still smudge with pencil. But that's another reason. And I've noticed too that even when I do my right-handed practice, I'll still end up smudging a little bit. So those are some of the reasons. Also, this pencil has never exploded in my pocket. It's never ruined any of my clothes. So that's another reason. And this mechanical pencil is also just pleasing to me. And it fits more nicely inside of my notebook like this. So, and I love these notebooks in particular above all. And yeah, those are the reasons, some of them. So some of them are completely irrational, I'll admit that. Others are just preference, and others are strategy. And I think that that's what boils down for all of us. A combination of irrational reasons we don't really understand, and preference and strategy. So those are mine. I hope that helps. And let me know if you have more questions around pencils. But those are the reasons. And I'm interested in the fountain pen thing, but I've never really gotten in tune with fountain pens, possibly because I'm left-handed and will have a very difficult time not touching my hand to a page as a result. Given the page construction, although I have written both forwards and backwards and done all that sort of stuff for brain exercise, which, Sandra, if you're still here, is another brain exercise that you can consider, is writing backwards. It's a very powerful, simple, entry-level one. I'm not talking about mirror writing, I'm just talking about writing backwards. Michael Swain says, my favorite way to brain dump is to go through a memory palace. When I get to the last filled space, there's a clarity of finalization that is mentally refreshing and perfect for pre-sleep. That's great. Thanks for that, Michael. And yeah, you know, there's a great benefit for going through memory palaces before sleeping, because it's just like a great time to give your brain that boost and that recall rehearsal. And there's some research around it, so you can look it up, the reason why that you want to rehearse information before you go to sleep. But it's really, really great and will have benefits. Although that research does suggest that consolidation before, like doing memory activities for the purposes of consolidation before sleep, may be something that is correlated with age. So they've shown that proximity to sleep recall practice before sleep may have consolidation effects for younger generations, but not older ones. And so I've done some N=1 experimentation around that, because I'm entering the age in which that consolidation benefit apparently goes down. Now, like all good science, it's not written in stone. It's observations based on data. So one shouldn't get too swayed by it, but by the same token, one should allow it to guide the practice and help you create your own experiments. So very interesting. Reclaiming Life says, oh, a lefty explains it. My mind thinks pencil equals temporary, pen equals permanent, and I love the feel of a good fine point pencil as well as fine point Japanese ground fountain pens. All right, well, Michael will probably like that detail about the Japanese ground pens for reasons that are interesting in his journey. What was that, Michael? Mutsu Kosh Kunai, right? Was that right? Kunai. Mutsu Kosh Kunai. I think that was right. Let me know. I haven't recalled it forever. And no worry, if I didn't get that right, let me know, because I can handle it. But I'd like to correct it. Mutsu Kosh Kunai. I think that's what it was. It's not a problem in Japanese. And then there was like a grammar thing about that. Sandra says, I'm a calligrapher. I'll try it. Excellent, excellent. Now, Sandra, the thing to think about is, we talked about some exercises in terms of skipping words in things, right? So now you can also write backwards and skip words, or write the alphabet backwards and skip letters, or write it forwards and skip letters, but write the alphabet forwards backwards and skip letters. So once you get one thing down and you're comfortable with it, maybe it's a bit of a challenge, maybe it isn't, then just crank on the challenge, but stay away from frustration. Mutsukashi kunai. Mutsukashi kunai. Really, did we cover the she sound in there? I don't remember having a she was there sheep? No, I don't remember that at all. Mutsukashi kunai. Did we record that call? I'd love to go back and see. Anyway, something I was missing there. Anyway, pretty close, pretty close. Mutsukashi kunai. I just do not remember this kashi thing. Interesting. Oh, was there maybe Johnny Cash with sheep in there? That might be, now that we're thinking about it. Anyway, pretty cool, pretty cool, pretty close. So what we would want to have done there, if we were learning Japanese and we really wanted to make sure that that was totally bulletproof, is we would want to make sure that there was sufficient repetition. I probably repeated that maybe too few times. Then I remember the next day after Michael and I talked about that, going to the accountant, and then he said, well, no, that's not right because it's junai, right? And that threw me, and I was like, what the heck? How could I go from kunai to junai and get that wrong? And I was like totally open to having completely gotten that wrong, but I was so sure. And then I remember asking Michael, and Michael's a busy guy, so didn't get an answer back for some time. And then I got this answer back that was just like way more Japanese than I'm dealing with, but I really appreciate it, by the way. And then I didn't hear back from the accountant what his thoughts were on this, but it's very interesting to think about this. And then now I would think, okay, so if I had been learning Japanese at the time, it's not only that it would need a sufficient amount of recall rehearsal, but also I would need to use it in more sentences, more context in dialogue, and then I'd probably be listening to a lot of Japanese, and I'd probably have heard it multiple times if it's common enough to be heard, and probably heard it in its variations. So those are some of the things that went wrong there in that case. So nice little meditation on that. And it blends into Maricella's question here, how to not feel overwhelmed. So one of the things is just to be practicing for life and be honest with yourself, and acknowledge these little things as slips and blurs and whatnot that come up, and then just work with them. See them as lessons and opportunities to grow and to fix and to correct and to learn more about your mind, and then think back through the circumstances, as I just did. So instead of being overwhelmed and being like, oh my God, I made a mistake with that, but actually just working with the conditions. What were the conditions of that particular experiment? What went wrong there? And then think of what my original images were. So I remember there was a zoo there, and there was a cow, and then I remember that also we had the German cow for Kuh, and so there's like some kind of border blur there, and then Johnny Cash must have been in there, and then I can't quite recall all of the magnetic imagery, which is very common, but start to think about this and work with it instead of feeling overwhelmed. And how that I'm not feeling overwhelmed about it is just that I have the mental attitude that this is a lifelong journey, and this is every error and slip and mistake is an opportunity to go and do some analysis and try and figure out what was going on there. And the conditions and the feelings and the emotions and all that sort of stuff will be different. So if this was a language I was actually learning, then this would be, a different set of feelings that might be more overwhelming and more consequential or less. But you have to see what those are at the time. But then in terms of overwhelm, what I'm basically trying to tell you is you have to acknowledge that feeling, and you have to see it for what it is, and then you have to be willing to let it go. So letting go is really, really important. After some sort of analysis, willingness to engage with it, willingness to analyze it, willingness to see it for what it is, put it in its context, and then let it go. Like, it really should have no hold on you. It should have no potency or whatever. As this book is called, Lead Yourself First. So see how it's interacting with yourself. Then start to think of the strategies and the tools that you're going to use to do better the next time, or determine what is better. One of the reasons why we get overwhelmed is because we're chasing after goals that are not properly instituted in the first place. We're chasing after outcomes that aren't really linked to what it is that we want to do. And all the brain exercise in the world isn't going to necessarily help with that. You've got to think, and you've got to try and make sure that you're actually proceeding towards outcomes that you actually really want, and that those things that you are doing that are causing the overwhelm are actually linked to an outcome that you really want, and there are the actual things that are going to get you to that outcome, and those things are the things that you're actually currently competent enough to do. So, Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson talks so much about the need for existing competence. And if you don't have the competence that's needed in order to reach particular outcomes and goals, then the thing that you need to do is work on developing the competence needed for the goals. So this is the old cart before the horse thing. Of course you'll feel overwhelmed if you put the cart in front of the horse. If you don't have the skills that you need, then you need to really, really think about what's the real task here. You may be being overwhelmed on irrational grounds because you're not following the exercises that you actually need for the skills that you actually need for the outcome that you actually need. So this is why daily journaling is such a great brain exercise, and I'm glad that brain dumping and writing came up, because one of the things that helped me so much in my life was to use daily journaling to test my assumptions about what it was that I wanted. And it is a great brain exercise too, is to sit there day after day after day and write out from memory what it is you think you want and test it. And this is having your BS radar on in full force. Because if you really don't want something, like let's say it's being fluent in language, then all of the exercise in the world, all of the techniques in the world, it's just like trying to get a horse to drink. But you could use those same techniques to get to another goal that you authentically want. And you could use the brain exercise to support getting that goal that you want. And then you'll never be frustrated or overwhelmed, because it's all just part of a journey towards the thing that you actually want. And then those things that serve as brain exercise will really, really just, you'll feel that it's getting you closer, because it will actually be getting you closer. So that's another way to deal with overwhelm. Other ways to deal with overwhelm. Well, is your diet correct? Are you feeding yourself with things that actually support the outcomes that you legitimately want? Or are you feeding yourself with things that are completely contrary and antithetical to that? Then you want to think about your diet, or your sleep rather. Is your sleep pattern actually conducive to achieving those particular outcomes? All the memory techniques in the world, they'll still help you, but you want to make sure that you're actually getting enough rest in order for them to really do the work that they can do for you. And so that's another reason why this concept of solitude in the Lead Yourself First book is going to be so important, is we want to really, really make sure that we are building environments and routines and habits and behaviors that support all this, so that overwhelm, when it comes, because it will come, is something that you can deal with. So a great exercise for you, and it counts as brain exercise, is to sit down and write down the best times of day that you can work, the best locations that you can do the work, and then show up at those times. And then, while you're there, the first thing that you can do is write out your vision of what it is that you want to accomplish and test it. And then if you find, oh, I'm so sick of writing this out, then you want to think, do I really want this? Because you should be excited to be sitting there every day writing out what it is that you want. And when I hit that moment in my own exercise where I was like, oh, I'm so sick of this, I realized that it wasn't the exercise. It was that I didn't really want the vision. And so then I changed the vision of what I wanted so that it fit the ability to show up to the exercise. And then everything just fell into place. Within a few short months, I was on tour with a band, because that's what I really wanted to be doing, right? It's that simple. And then I was using my memory for something that I really wanted to do, which was to learn all this complex music to go out on tour with them. Very, very, very powerful. So that's a long answer to your question, Maricella, but I hope it helps. And you guys are having a great chat here all about pens in Japan. Awesome. So I'll go and read the replay later. Sandra's mentioning Braille here, and you can see it in your mind reversed. Wow, Braille must be... Speaking of Braille, now that you mention it, I met this guy named Jared the other day, and this is an interesting situation because we're going to interview him on the podcast, and this is amazing. So there's a Belgian chocolate shop here in Brisbane on Albert Street, and Heather and Jared run this, and we walk in there. I'm on my digital fasting. I have no devices or anything like that. And they tell us that they have the best chocolate in Brisbane and that they're a small business. And I'm like, yeah, well, they're a small family business. I'm like, yeah, we got a small family business too. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, what do you do? And I was like, oh, memory training. And then Heather says, oh, my husband, Jared, he has the most amazing memory and he's blind. And I look at him, and then, you could tell that he's blind. I didn't notice at first. But sometimes there's these telltale signs. And I was like, oh wow, so what do you do in your memory? And he says, oh, I just visualize I said, what do you memorize really well? And he's like, oh, he's got amazing memory for numbers and stuff. And I was like, what do you do in your memory? He says, oh, I just visualize the numbers. And I'm like, wait a second. As a person I said, are you congenitally blind? He said, yeah, from birth. And I was like, well, what does that mean? I said, I don't know, I just visualize them. And then I said, you got to be on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, right? Because of there's so many people who ask me about how that blind people could possibly use memory techniques or have a better memory. And then the whole aphantasia thing, where people have heard about this disease as if not having a mind's eye would be a disease. And then they start to trick themselves out of into thinking that they couldn't use memory techniques, which is absolutely false. And I told him, he's like, yeah, happy to be on your podcast. So I'm gonna get him on the podcast, and I hope you're as excited as I am, because I want to hear more about they were busy, they got all kinds of people in their store, and I just had to skedaddle out of there so they could serve everybody else. But we got our memory-friendly chocolate, and so we could talk about chocolate and memory at the same time. And apparently he's climbed mountains and won all kinds of medals and stuff in Paralympics and all this stuff. So I'm really excited to talk with him on the podcast. Let me know in the chat. Does that sound exciting to you? Someone who has a great memory, who actually said, I visualize in my mind, who actually has never seen in his life. Is that exciting to you? Let me know in the chat. Hit the thumbs up, and we'll get that interview out as soon as possible. Maricella says, I like to read backwards, and I used to write from the back of a notebook to the front. I have an Arabian or Israeli book, and it can be read backwards. All right, yeah, so that's true. Definitely. Bruntiver says, for strategy, I'm somehow having a bit of an issue sleeping. I'm not stressed, but my mind is like dynamite, always ready to create, even after a calm meditation. How do you guys fall into sleep? Great. So one of the things that I recommend is learning Shavasana, which is to basically put yourself into corpse pose in meditation and allow yourself to understand what that is. And it's not about putting yourself to sleep, but it's training yourself to be comfortable staying still. And what will happen is you can do some progressive muscle relaxation, all of which is covered in the masterclass. You can do some pendulum breathing while you're there, but get comfortable with just laying in bed doing nothing. And then one of the things you can also add that I've added in years since that I learned Shavasana is you can do some Kirtan Kriya, which is usually paired with movement, Sata Nama or Ami Tofo in the Chinese version, and except here you can do this without touching your fingers. This is also a great brain exercise, by the way. It's known to improve memory, but you can also do it without touching fingers. And then if Michael Swain, he already suggested going through memory palaces while laying. But if you're actually practicing absence of movement through Shavasana, sometimes pronounced Savasana, then you can use that state of immobilization to focus on your breathing while going through memory palaces. And don't make falling asleep the goal. Make becoming still and being comfortable with stillness the goal. and your body will ultimately force you to move. And my experience is that usually by the time that I have to move, I have already fallen asleep. So I think that that will help you. Very, very important. So, William, this is not moleskin. It is something from Germany, and I'm not sure it even has a brand name. It's just a generic notebook. I bought a box of them because they're so good. I hope that, but yeah, moleskin, I think, I've never actually had one, but I think I will try it in the future. But I like this size, and there's a reason why I like this size, because it fits in my back pocket of my jeans perfectly. And I think the moleskin ones just are a little bit sized awkwardly for that. So, William Reclaiming Life is asking which my Mahayana practice I focus the most on. I would first suggest not trying to link it to those traditions. This is not coming from that sort of sense. Why? Because that risks putting something sort of special on those things. We want to extract as much as possible any sort of mysticism or anything like that, which isn't to suggest that that's what you were doing, but I don't think that they belong to that tradition. Even if I use the word shavasana and I'm doing now and was doing with that exactly what I'm suggesting not doing, but that's because that's the way you'll find it on Wikipedia. But at the end of the day, it's just laying still. Just laying still. Michael, thanks for being here. Thanks for saying hello, and we'll work on that stuff that we were talking about again later. But thank you for being here and your suggestions. Amazing. Really appreciate it. But yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that when these things come from a tradition, but at the same time, not to make that part of the practice, because so many of the breathing practices that I've learned were actually from Sistema. And to the extent that they come from Mahayana or whatever tradition, I don't know, right? And it's like a weird thing, a paradoxical thing that I'm suggesting. We want to recognize our sources at all times, but then when there's mystification involved, really try to stay away from the mystification, which is a problem, because then people will get into sometimes traps that lead them into outcomes that actually aren't possible. So that's my caution there. And yet at the same time, they may even, it's the old Oedipus thing. Sometimes the fate that you're trying to avoid is the thing that leads you into the fate that you're trying to avoid. So, but in any case, what I'm trying to get at is that I really don't know anything about the Mahayana tradition. And if any of the things that I'm saying belong to that, then I'm just saying I don't know how or why. But I do know that corpse pose, or just laying still, is a strategy that is sometimes called savasana or shavasana. And I like to use that word, even though it's just so people can find it on YouTube or whatever, Wikipedia. But it's really just laying still and suppressing movement, and not for any outcome other than falling asleep. And you will experience in doing it all kinds of mental phenomena. And it's very important that mental phenomena not be somehow mystified, because that's not the goal. The goal is just to get better sleep so your memory works better. That's the issue here, and I think it's an important one. So Reclaiming Life William says, so true. I try to tell people time and time again that all religions can learn so much that doesn't contradict their own faith if they look at other faiths and practices. Yeah, it's hard to exactly explain what I'm trying to say, and I think it's one of the, I don't know who here is following the Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson thing, but it's one of those issues where it's hard to know which side to fall on, but I think ultimately they're both right, but one of them is more right than the other. And one of them seems to be dancing around an issue that is so obvious. And that is that humans naturally tend to find patterns and mystify them, and then that leads into traps that leads them into exactly the thing they're trying to avoid. So in meditation, we know that if you're trying to escape thought, so many of the meditation practices are going to trap you into more thought. I know this all too well because that's what happened to me. And I became very good at thinking I was having meditative experiences that I wasn't. Now, those all have tremendous abilities and wonderful outcomes. And I couldn't have gotten to where I got without being in those puzzles and those traps. But I was locking myself into this part of the brain by following those advices. And they are saying that they will help you free yourself from thought, but they never will, precisely because of the nature of those things. And we have so much science now, science in the truest form of science. And the book that I highly recommend that you read on this is The Science of Enlightenment by Shinzen Young. And you won't find all the perfect things in there, but it's a really, really good read for helping direct the focus on what science really is and getting the best out of science minus the mystification that will lead you into the traps you're trying to avoid. Because so much of the meditation teaching is leading you into the traps that you may be trying to avoid, because they just aren't acknowledging the richness of the science. And some of the best teachers out there frown upon science, and they poo-poo it, and they are just absolutely dangerous as a result. This is false and wrong. And this is why the conversation that's happening right now between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris is so important, because they are de facto both scientists, and one of them is very painfully trying to preserve an irrational tradition-based sort of thinking and science at the same time and yoke them together without putting in some very essential things, which would just be the acknowledgement that those irrational things too must pay their dues to science, to scientific thinking, which is the test only you can conduct, right? And verify and validate. But the problem is that a lot of people won't do those tests themselves, and they will just take things at their word, and then they'll wind up going and doing practices that will lead them into the traps they're trying to evade. So, all of which is to say, think about what it is that you want the outcome to be, and then create the kinds of practices that are going to get you towards those outcomes, and then submit yourself to them and practice them and do them, and then test and verify and validate on a day-to-day basis, and make sure that you're in line with the teachers that are truthful and honest and are really not trying to disguise their own issues, because every teacher also is a human. They're also going to, if they're really walking the walk, or walking their talk and all that sort of stuff, they themselves are going to encounter all kinds of problems, and they're not going to try and sweep them under the rug, right? And Shinzen Young, I won't get into all the stories that he shares there, but he shares many, many stories from the Buddha tradition where the Buddha tried to show people how this is true, how that some of his students were like super enlightened, but other people who didn't have enough qualifications wouldn't be able to recognize their enlightenedness because they simply themselves weren't qualified to be able to see it and perceive it and so forth. And it's really interesting that way. Anyway, there's lots and lots of stuff there. So The Science of Enlightenment, it's called. I really recommend this book. It's amazing. And I need to reread it because it's so good. Really great. I hope to have him on the podcast. And this is one of those things where I put myself in my own mental puzzle. I'm like, man, that guy's too important to be on my podcast. But I should try and get him on anyway and just battle that, because really, he'd probably be you read The Science of Enlightenment and oh wow, you talked about it on a live stream? Yeah, sure, I'll be on your show. So why talk myself out of it when he's probably the most important person who could be a guest on the podcast, right? So I'll see what I can do about that. Battle my own little inner demon there. But Yeah, lots of issues and problems. But the cool thing about the internet is it's like the great lottery it's the great lottery you can actually win. It's the great casino where you can actually win. Um, and what I'm trying to say is that the more that you go and study and actually not just watch the dude's videos, but go and read their books and stuff, the more you actually can put the pieces together of all these masses of information. And then if Google locks you or YouTube locks you into a vortex where you're just being fed the same information, well, if you follow up and actually read the books, then you lay sediment into which this information can thrive. And remember we talked earlier about the garden and needing space for redundancy and so forth? Well, the problem is that if you're just watching videos and you're not reading their books, all you're doing is you're just getting all of this fragmentary information, all these seeds, but you're not laying the soil in order for the seeds to actually have a chance to grow into anything. And if you're not memorizing the stuff from those books, like Magnetic Memory, for example, in Maps of Meaning, and some of the concepts and the terms that he puts there, well then you can watch all that stuff and it'll be okay. But at the end of the day, if you lay the actual growth, the soil for those seeds to take purchase and to grow, then the roots are going to grow and so forth. So, I read a lot of Harris before any of this happened with the internet and so forth. So I watched Sam Harris videos very different than other people who haven't read all that stuff. Like before his podcast even appeared, and it's just amazing. So you don't have to like have done it beforehand. You just need to do it. And as William Reclaiming Life is saying here, books equals win. Exactly. So thumbs up to that. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet button, boom, whether you're watching the replay or now, joining us now, do that. I want to check in with some chats here. Brunheimer, Forest Strategy, says cognitive biases. Yeah, that's a huge issue. My favorite book on cognitive biases is called You Are Not So Smart. Check that out. Reclaiming Life, William says, Peterson and Harris, are both brilliant minds that are very worthy of respect. I'm personally a fan of Peterson, but truly respect both. It needs to be highly personal. Much respect for the way you summarized it. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Peterson also. I wouldn't say that my chips fall on the side of one or the other. There's something very important about what's happening between them both. There's this sense of collaboration. Although I have to say that I don't feel that Harris has read Peterson in the way that Peterson has read Harris. And you see that coming through. I might be wrong about that. I don't know. But both of them have written books on memory. They may not see it that way, but I do. Because Waking Up is a book on memory, and Maps of Meaning is definitely a book on memory. It talks about memory so much. It talks about episodic memory, procedural memory, semantic memory, and it talks about nestic memory. And it's just completely 100% about memory. And he's also talking a lot about the 80-20 rule. He's just not maybe using that term there. But Waking Up is also a book about memory. It mentions memory so often. And one of the things that may not be as evident to you as it is to me, although it is as evident to you as it is to me if you don't see it this way or use the terminology this way, but everything is memory. It's all it is, right? Either you are encoding something now, or you are remembering something now, or you are drawing upon your memory to make connections based on like every word that I'm saying, if you understand it, it's because you at some point have had that word entered into your memory. And not only that, but you have future memory, which is somehow grammatically capable of anticipating things that I haven't even said yet to help manage all of this. And so the Peterson sort of take in Maps of Meaning would be this: you're mapping already all sorts of things for the survival advantage that you may or may not perceive, right? And so it's really, really interesting that your ability to capitalize on anything that's happening right now is being managed in your memory at this moment with an 80-20 sort of emphasis and orientation, and it's all being managed in your head with past, present, and future memory management, right? Relative to where your competence is right now. And your competence is either being fed and strategically growing, or you're passively just sort of letting it wash over you and things are magnetically, so to speak, sticking for future use at a time, to tip to Sam Harris, that no one knows, because free will really won't help you here, right? You just need to keep on bumping into things that are shifting you, moving you into becoming that which you will become, because what else could possibly be happening, right? And if there is free will, then it is really just the extent to which you use the speed of implementation rule to take action now on things that are being recommended to you now. And the more you become aware of this, the more ongoing brain exercise you have in everyday life. And so both of them are essentially encouraging and pushing everybody to lay the groundwork for doing brain exercise all the time. 24/7 brain fitness, because you're paying attention to what's happening in your memory right now. I would say that it's a memory management thing, and that you're always setting the groundwork for the as unyet known future, always yet to come, so long as you're alive. And the more that you are engaged actively in that, ethically, morally optimizing as you go along for fitness, the better and better chance you stand to accomplish anything worth accomplishing in the world. And it's just a matter of managing your competence and feeding your competence consistently and taking action. Because this is the Peterson emphasis in Maps of Meaning that never seems to come out as clearly in his speech, but is activated in your head if you've read the actual material, is that it's all about action potential in a world that is constantly in the process of becoming that which it will become. And this is where he sometimes catches himself and says, oh, I shudder to think I might sound like a postmodernist now. But these are the best tools from the postmodernists. And they're not from the postmodernists, it's just that they really emphasize this, is the action potential of the emergent properties that are in play right now as we speak. So that might be heavy duty stuff, but if you get into it, you really begin to understand that now is the only moment, and we really need to focus on that nowness and the fullness of the now, and optimize our brains physically, which is what Sam Harris is really great for, physically, in order to be able to spot where we are in a hierarchy right now, and then be optimized for optimizing and improving our competence to make more of the existing field as the emergence of the present into the future into the present moment is constantly coming into being, and the past, quote unquote, is being either preserved or destroyed, right? And it's either going to be preserved or destroyed in such a way that affects and improves your competence for survival in the present moment, or it's going to be done in such a way that destroys it or reduces your competence. And that's it. That's the law of the jungle right there. More or less. I know it's like it gets a little swimmy and goofy, and it can be difficult to actually verbalize, but they're both doing a great job and they're collaborating. And I really, really appreciate that this is happening now. And, you know, it comes in waves. I remember it happening before and being able to sit in on some great talks, like seeing Umberto Eco speak back in the day when I was in university was amazing. Amazing. Because as he says in The Name of the Rose, signs and the signs of signs are needed only when we are lacking in things. And one of the things that you learn from Umberto Eco is the difference between interpretation and misinterpretation, and when misinterpretation is a tool for optimizing your life and when it isn't, and when you need to, like, when signs and signs of signs are needed. And that's usually when you're lacking in things. But sometimes we don't even know when we're lacking in things. So then we need to develop the sense for when we're lacking in things. And so some of the brain exercises we talked today about are going to help you know more about when you're lacking in things. I've noticed today some things where I'm lacking in things. And what's so very good about that is that I'm now able to think, oh, well, there's some brain exercises that I need to work on. Or, oh, well, there's some things that I need to actually have some thoughts about and improve. And what am I going to do to improve? So I strategize, make it happen. And you can only do that by paying attention to the present moment and reflecting on it, and then actually taking action. And then knowing what are your triggers that will help you actually take action, so that you are actually taking action and moving towards betterment in your life. Anyway, I have some more things to say on Maps of Meaning in the future. And stay tuned for that. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, then you'll definitely want to do that, and the blog, and follow those things. And we'll probably talk about them here on the channel. But really great things are happening in the internet right now. And David is here, says instant learning. Thank you, David, for being here. Really appreciate that. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world and where you're at with your brain exercises. Broomtiver, Forest Strategy, says, I'll be waiting for your book on meditation. But by that time, I will surely have tried some crazy new things for fun. Well, I hope you'll let me know what they are so that maybe they can be referred to or discussed in the book. We are certainly going to have I think what will be my best book ever in the new one, and I can't wait to get it done, but putting in a lot of elbow grease into the outline. And I was talking with Martin, a friend here, Rousses, and really he might come and be on the webinar where we talk about the outline of the book with the crew, the people like yourself. So we'll need to send me an email, actually, because I don't know if Broomtiver or Forest Strategy will show up in my filters when I search for that special invitation. So if you can make it, that would be awesome. And still feeling the way about how this book is going to be, but the outline is pretty well done. I just feel like I'm waiting for the right moment to get started, and I really want to run it past the people who I'm writing it for. So thank you for being interested in it. Broomtiver says, thanks for the recommendation of the books. Very helpful. I've added them to my wish list. Excellent. So speed of implementation rule would be wish list is a great strategy, but at the same time, if you were to do what I do, is just order them immediately within the next 12 hours. Because speed of implementation rule tells us that for every hour that passes, one is less likely to actually do that. So like lead yourself first is here because boom, got to read it, right? And now it's here. And then the first thing that I do is start to read it as soon as it comes. Even if I'm not going to finish it, I do like a quick cursory read and go, oh wow, now I definitely have to read this, right? And that's how so many books get read because of the speed of implementation rule. Highly recommend physical books rather than digital, just simply because books are so much more likely to be lost in a digital thing. I used to love reading from Kindle, but just not working out, so I stopped some years ago. But anyway, I know that not everybody can read physical books, and I and myself don't like collecting so many books around, but Herding Tigers was a book that I just read. I thought, hey, I was meeting my friend Tam. I was just like, hey, this book is for Tam. I gave it to him, you know? And he said, oh, I'll give it back to you. I said, well, no, maybe you hand it on to the next person. And allow that to be a circulation, right? So pass forward what one gets. Really important. So Reclaiming Life, William says, every discussion will happen at a time when society most needs it, or they will be able to look back on it and grow as a society, or when they can use them to achieve a better society in future. Yeah, I wish that I could agree with that fully, but often there are many conversations that doesn't happen at all when society most needs it. And so if you listen to the Waking Up podcast, there's an episode with Neil Ferguson where they talk about counterfactuals. And so we can see all kinds of moments in history where the conversation that needed to happen didn't happen at all. And that's another brain exercise, is counterfactuals. So if you haven't heard that with that episode on the Waking Up podcast with Neil Ferguson, it's all about counterfactuals, and I highly recommend listening to it, because that is just as we can say that many of the conversations society needs to have happen, we can also just as equally say that many of the conversations society needed to have happen didn't happen, and there's all kinds of reasons why those conversations didn't happen, and there's some strategies behind suppressing a number of conversations that needed to happen but didn't happen. And so we need to understand counterfactuals, and we need to use them. And also the point is that counterfactuals do not necessarily need to be applied to global history or regional history, but they can also be applied to your life. And often counterfactuals are very interesting to think about in one's own life. If this hadn't have happened, what would have been the alternative and what would have been those outcomes. Very powerful brain exercise for orienting yourself just sometimes to the gratitude for how things are, because this conversation we're having right now didn't have to happen. And there are many things that could have impeded it. And it's very interesting and powerful and good brain exercise to think through what those alternatives would be. And in fact, they're on a daily basis. So I'll share with you some of the things that are coming to mind. When I was in grade 2, I was hit by a car, right? That could have radically changed things. I could have been in a wheelchair, could have been brain dead, could have been all sorts of things, right? I could have succumbed in my university years to the suicidal depression that I had and not gotten my PhD and died. Or I could have succumbed to the suicidal depression that I had and followed the recommendation of the doctors and, taken much more aggressive medicines and not finished my PhD. Or finish, you could just go through all these pivotal moments in life and then think of what happened there and why did things play out as they did, and what would have been the alternative results. And one of the things that does is it makes you so much more grateful for how things did turn out and how they played out, but it also helps, and this is back to the maps of meaning sort of thing, it helps think about and attune attention on the opportunities for making things even better. This is why memory techniques are so profound, because you go back through all your memory palaces, you get really intimate with your understanding of pop culture, you know yourself more and more, better and better every day. Every time that you're using the memory techniques, you're essentially using yourself, and you're sorting, you're sifting, you're screening, you're going through all this material, you're associating it with information that's going to improve your life, and you're getting better and better and better as your brain is being exercised more and more and more, and your mental fitness and your mental ability to just stream in and zone in on the things that actually matter on a moment-to-moment basis gets better and stronger and more profound, and you miss out less and less on those rich, amazing, wonderful things. And then you end up having to deal with fewer counterfactuals where I wish I had done this, or I hoped that I had, it's like always, you're so much better to be zooming in this way through consistent mental practice, mental focus on improvement. Anyway, I'm jamming, I'm riffing, I'm ranting, I'm raving, all for the glories and the powers of wonderful memory techniques and brain exercise to constantly attune our attention on the things that matter in life and always be improving our lives and our brain and our mental fitness and just having a great adventure, a great, wonderful, beautiful adventure. So Sandra says, Amazon is one of my favorite stores. Definitely. Sandra says, they are a huge help with their toy list to the professional Santa community, which I'm a part of. Excellent. Grandkids and kids, I imagine. Not sure. Sandra says for books. Oh, that's for being a Santa. That's great. Okay, yeah, well, I mean, gifts. Books are great gifts, for sure. One of the cool things I like on the Tim Ferriss podcast is how he always says, what's the book that you give away to people the most? Which is always a fun thing to listen to that. I think that often people say, well, I actually don't give away books that much, but then, you just ask, what's the book you recommend the most? Right now, the book I recommend the most is Happiness Beyond Thought by Gary Weber, which is filled with brain exercise of the most incredible sort. So one of the great memory exercises there, Sandra, is where I originally thought of the idea of skipping letters of the alphabet, because he talks about number skipping there. And as I applied it from Happiness Beyond Thought, in meditation, breathing in, this is a great memory brain exercise that helps with memory. You breathe in and you count 1. You breathe out, you count 1. Then when you breathe in the second time, you suppress the count. A little bit of radio silence there. But I'm like suppressing the count of 2. And then you allow yourself to count 3. So 3 and 3. Then. And so what you're working on is you're starting to understand how your brain symbolizes. You're starting to understand what thought is. You're starting to feel what it's like to quote unquote suppress thought. And you're giving yourself relief from the act of working with thought and suppressing thought. It's very powerful. because you're doing it in short, focused, concentrated blasts, then giving yourself a break. So it's tension, release, and you work towards getting from 1 to 10 and then 10 back to 1. So you suppress the even numbers on the way up, suppress the odd ones on the way down. And I hit success with it, I think, much earlier than a lot of people would, because I had meditated for years before adding on the tools that Gary Weber shares in Happiness Beyond Thought. But these brain exercises will help anybody just to even contend with them, to feel them and work with them. And we just know that any meditation improves memory. And one of the reasons we know for sure that it improves memory is because it's helping you be more aware of your surroundings, both your internal surroundings and your external surroundings. And then you're automatically going to start to remember more, because the more you pay attention, the more you have material actually entering into short-term memory to be processed for storage in long-term memory. And this gets back to this sort of thing, which is journaling. So if you are going to do all these things, add journaling, because journaling and just writing down some stuff about your day is exercising your autobiographical memory and other levels of memory, which leads to remembering more about your life. And if you read Richard Weissman's 59 Seconds, you'll get some of the science around that to show why it is so, and other tools. And Sandra says, sorry, I was responding to William's comment to me. Thank you for giving me motivation and tools for another week. Well, Sandra, no apologies at all. But if you're going to be going to the store and buying gifts, I recommend Happiness Beyond Thought for sure. 59 Seconds from Richard Weissman for sure. And another book from Richard Weissman that's really powerful is called The Luck Factor. And I'm so glad I read The Luck Factor, because it really helped me in many, many ways. David says, hi, just outside of New York City, not 100% sure who you are, honestly, or the context of this video, but I'm kind of mind blown right now. The past month I've been thinking about specific words as lenses through which to see the world. Excellent, David. Well, thanks for being here. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't already. Get subscribed to this channel. We ask that, well, so we can meet again if you're not subscribed already, but also to tell the Google robots that you're paying attention, and what Google knows, Google shows, or YouTube knows, YouTube shows, and I'd love to meet you again. My name is Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com. Sometimes I have cards in my hands, which is why I might look like I'm fidgeting down in my lap here, but it's not that, it's this. One of the reasons I do that is because, if you have strategies for your hands, then you're able to do stuff. Sometimes I squeeze this, and this is all brain exercise. And sometimes people, they have lack of concentration, focus, and so forth. And we talk a lot about how you can use memory exercises and memory techniques to help concentration and focus. And you're right, words are lenses through which to see the world. And words really matter. There's an article Stanley Fish wrote where he talks about the difference between meaning meaning what you say and saying what you mean. And one of the things that's really important is knowing the etymology of words and the fullness and the richness of where words come from. And the more you know about words, the more that you can use them in crisp and pristine ways that really cut through the fog of potential meanings, so that you really do mean what you say and say what you mean. And often that means word management in real time. And so that's really important. Great. And David says, today, mind mapping came to mind. Well, Sandra, there's another brain exercise for you. Mind mapping is great brain exercise. Tony Buzan meant for mind mapping to represent the structures of the brain on the paper, which is why there's a central image to replicate the nucleus and so forth. David says, maps on meaning came up. I thought to look up YouTube videos on mind mapping. This morning, I revisited it tonight and got led to this video, and here you are talking about maps of meaning. Amazing. So I wonder if Google is reading right now my words and feeding that for you for that. But yeah, we do have a video on advanced mind mapping. Check that out. And as William Reclaiming Life says, Tony Buzan has a new book, Mind Map Mastery, and yes, I released a podcast and a full blog post on that. So if you search Tony Buzan and Magnetic Memory Method, you'll come up with that, and you're going to love that book, Mind Map Mastery. It's so good, and hopefully my additional notes will help you there. I suggest getting the physical copy of the book, for it is wonderful. It's got so many colors. I don't know, I haven't seen the digital version. Maybe the digital version will work through. It depends on where you're at in your world, but highly recommend the physical. And it's got wonderful examples of the memory palaces. Tony, of course, gave me these balls here, and Think Buzan, if you ever get a chance to go and study with him, please take it for sure. The other guy to mention here is Phil Chambers, and we have a review, more of like an extended discussion of his book on how to train your memory coming up very soon. And he's also very good at mind mapping. He's the mind mapping world champion, and he has top tips for mind mapping. Really great, wonderful. It's like a pamphlet, but I think it's available. It is, I believe. I still want to say I think, because I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I think you can get it for Kindle now. Oh, it's so excellent. But I would say lay the groundwork first with some Tony Buzan, and amazing. So yeah, and Maps of Meaning, Maps of Meaning is great. Great. There's a fun video we made, I don't know if you've seen it, called Speed of Implementation, where I show you, my friend Nick and I, we go out and we get maps of meaning. Emerson's is not here, I don't think, but she said, more on Jordan Peterson, please. So we filmed a day in the life of a mnemonist. We're going around memorizing people's names. Meredy was the name of the person who helped us find it in Dymock's bookstore. Memorized where we parked. These are the kinds of things we do on this channel, and just talk about the adventure of using memory techniques every day in your life, and how it unlocks so much joy, so much creativity, so much knowledge that's directed to improving your life, and how that it does it. That's what this is about. So we appreciate every person who thumbs up, gets subscribed, and joins us. There's the live streams, of course, for discussion, real-time chat. Sometimes if you have a tolerance for replays, the replays are good to go through, but there's also dedicated videos for just watching that are a little more streamlined and polished. And yeah, we work on improving. I'm not a professional filmmaker by any stretch of the imagination, but we do what we can to get better over time and make that a goal, just as I hope you do with your memory as well. And we've talked a lot about brain exercises today. So thanks everybody for being here. Physico has a question. Great. Greetings from Brazil. Greetings from Brisbane. You have a question, Physico. Do I have some brain exercises to diminish procrastination? Yes, I do. Let's get into that. Thanks for that question. Great for having you here. Timothy's here. Oh, Timothy, great. Great to see you here. Thumbs up to Timothy for being here. Do you have any ideas on how I could use balloon art as a brain exercise? I've learned hundreds of balloon animals, which has made it possible to make hundreds of more designs from my imagination. Excellent questions. Let's get into this. And by the way, if you're joining us and you're not posting your questions, please do. That's what makes these so incredible and fun and amazing, really, is when you engage and have these cool questions for us to work with. So Physico first. Brain exercises to diminish procrastination. Well, the first question I would have actually is, what does that mean to you, right? What is procrastination? And why are you doing it? When are you doing it? This is the first brain exercise, by the way. Get a piece of paper out and a pen and a pencil and write down, what is procrastination? When does it take place? Why do you think you're doing it? Then do the Benjamin Franklin exercise, which is the pros and the cons. So let me do this now, because I don't really procrastinate that much, because I've shifted my idea about what procrastination is, according to the 80-20 rule. And often, procrastination happens because we're processing something. But you have to be doing enough groundwork in order for that processing to actually take place. So if you go through masterclass training and so forth, we talk about planning procrastination for the purposes of fulminating the actual work of benefiting from this. So I don't think I did this right, but if I try to do backwards writing, pros and cons. Oh, my N is backwards, but I tried to write backwards here. But put down the pros and cons and go like this with a line, and just jot out as many pros and cons as you can have. So some of the pros might be, well, I'm resting, getting in my Star Trek that I missed, or Better Call Saul, or whatever it is, right? And allowing yourself to maybe whatever. And think about that. Is that actually happening? Now, for a lot of people, that isn't happening because they're sitting there punishing themselves. They're watching Better Call Saul, but they're thinking, but I should be doing this, or but I should be doing that. Well, that's not procrastinating. That's punishinating. Pro-punishinating. There's a new word for you. And that's not procrastination, right? That's punishment. That's torture. So you want to think about that. And one of the things that I've done to really correct that is just to recognize it when it's happening and stop punishing myself and just enjoy what's happening. And also having something nearby. So if I'm just like watching, and this might seem like a little bit of like trying to have your cake and eat it too, but if I'm watching a show and I'm doing this, well, I'm practicing my Pharaoh shuffle, right, while I'm watching a show. So you get to have your cake and eat it too, right? You're doing some kind of mechanical activity and you're watching your show. So I'm not really procrastinating anymore. I'm practicing my Pharaoh and getting it down. And that's a way to think about it, right? And I'm resting my mind. So that's a possibility. Maybe I'm practicing some cuts as well. Oops, not practicing very well enough. This deck is old and sticky, but there we go. That's a little better. That kind of thing. So you can actually relieve some of that guilt and punishment by just doing a exercise that requires some dexterity. The other thing that you might consider in terms of the cons and so forth is, or the pros, is that you're practicing now, studying your mind about what's going on. So now every time that you catch yourself procrastinating and punishing yourself, you then say, but this is now not procrastinating, this is me studying what's going on. And go from there. And then the cons, of course, are up for you to decide, but sometimes I think it always just comes down to that you're punishing yourself. So reframe it, and then think about how you can schedule that. Now, other exercises that you might do are to start up a morning routine where you write down all the things that might be a barrier to you that day that would cause procrastination. Right? What is it that's causing this? And so on. So that's really important. And then, you can have the day before brain exercise where you write down what you're going to do tomorrow and chart the perfect day. And that can help the next day as well. And you can relieve it with something called the Freedom Journal that I use a lot, which is really powerful and profound to help do that, or the Mastery Journal as well. It sort of helps you do the exercise in advance. Think about also the things you're grateful for and the things that you want to increase in your life. These are all sorts of brain exercise. And then do memory exercise, and then use the memory palaces that you create out of that so that you're always memorizing something every day that's going to improve the quality of your life, so you keep moving forward towards better and better states. So that's really, really great. Now, for Timothy, ideas about how you can use balloon art as brain exercise. So, okay, this is interesting. What would it be like if you could, for example, memorize words in a foreign language and then use the balloons to make letters from the alphabet? I don't know, can you make letters from the alphabet out of balloons? And then see if you can make the words out of order. So let's say you memorized a new word, like herdidyad that I memorized the other day from Sanskrit, or triapi. And then you'd be like, okay, I'm going to spell this like in English, right? Transliteration. I'm going to spell this in balloons out of order. And you could do order in different ways, like the odd numbered letters, or you could do the first letter and the last letter and the second letter and the second to last letter and so on, right? Maybe that would be something. And you're tracking it in your mind as you're engaged in the physical activity. It'd almost be like juggling while doing this, but you're blowing and you're planning what the next letter is that you have to do. That could be something. How does that sound? Reclaiming Life says shuffles and cuts and coin manipulation are great during screen time. Yeah, lots of that. So William, you're a card man yourself and a coin man. That's cool to find out. Brunheimer for Strategy says to physical gamer procrastination is to have an easy access to a low reward activity. Ask yourself what else you could do with that time that would be more rewarding. Change that reward for a better one. Yeah, great suggestion. I like what you're saying there, Brunheimer for Strategy, because there's often that procrastination is related to some sort of activity that has a reward, but it's a low reward. So one of the things you could do in your assessment and analysis here is create a hierarchy of rewards and then just think, okay, so what would be the gold coin reward? What would be the silver coin reward? What would be the bronze coin reward? Or what would be the $100 reward, the $50 reward, or the $1 reward, or whatever? Whatever works for you. Watermelon reward, peach reward, banana reward, whatever fruit you like the best. Associate it with something like that, and maybe even give yourself a prize. Now, associating outcomes with rewards is good for some people. For other people, it's not that good. But if it's good for you, then actually, if this happens, I will allow myself to eat a banana or whatever that thing is, right? Go to the arcade and spend $1 to play an arcade or whatever, an arcade game. Which incidentally is a cool way of looping together fitness with an outcome. So let's say I was really into Pac-Man or something, and I said, if I get chapter 1 of my book today, then I will allow myself to go and walk to play Pac-Man at the arcade. Now I'm getting fitness, right? Which I love to actually walk, but that's also getting fitness. So think of that. David says, how often do you do these live videos? Enjoying it a lot. Thank you. Well, usually every week at about this time. There's a couple reasons why I don't actually schedule them. So the best thing to do to win the lottery that can be won on the internet is get subscribed, hit that bell icon, and then notice if you get notifications. But ultimately, also be part of the podcast, part of the blog, and on my email list for all of the wonderful things that happen over there. And we're working towards a scheduled series of sessions where you can actually plan and put it on the calendar, and a way to make this for the different time zones. And that news is coming. We're getting closer and closer to the news of that. So stay tuned for that. I'm really, really excited and refining that process. But these generally take place at around this time, at least once a week, but with no promises on that. So keep your emails open around this time. And if you're subscribed and you've hit that bell, then YouTube should let you know. Timothy says, got it. I will try the balloon art suggestion and see if I can expand upon it to own it and make it meaningful to me and my purposes. That's great, Timothy. Thanks. Let me know. And if you ever make a video of you doing any balloon art, or especially doing this practice, that would be awesome. And one of the things we love is when people send us video testimonials. So if you're able to do that and incorporate some balloon stuff in it, that would just be super amazing and much appreciated, because we love to have on video ways of helping people understand that other people use these techniques and what it means to them, so that they can see and connect with it on video. And if you're able to incorporate that, that'd be absolutely phenomenal. We'd appreciate it. And I'd love to see your craftsmanship and your art and be able to share that with thousands of people. So please do, and look forward to that. And I'll try and think of other things that you could do. Here's an idea. So let's say that you're using your memory techniques to remember even more philosophers, because if memory serves, you were memorizing a bunch of philosophers, right, Timothy? So now imagine that just you do some select excavation of your memory palaces, and let's say you memorized, I don't know, Descartes. And in terms of Descartes, you had somehow associated him with some dates and monkeys or whatever. I don't know what you may have done there. See where there are balloon animal opportunities, and you could either have created the balloon animals already, or you could create them as you go along, and you could tell a story about a philosopher that you've memorized some information about while you're creating the balloons that are based on your magnetic imagery in the memory palaces, and sort of tell that story. So let's say Simonides of Kos, right? He's not really a philosopher, but go with me on this, and in some sense maybe he is. He was certainly a poet and a scholar in his day, and so you're telling the stories of Simonides of Kos about the memory palace, and you're actually helping people see how you memorize that story by making balloon animals that represent the magnetic imagery, and you're placing them in an order. Like say you made a balloon animal castle out of paper mache or whatever, and that castle represents the memory palace. And so first you have a monkey, then you have a dog, then you have a chicken or whatever, right? And just like that could be an idea. So I hope that gives you something. Timothy said, or William says to Timothy, there's so much that can be done with balloons. If needed, email me. Great, thanks. I hope you guys can connect. That's one of the things we want to do for this community, is connect like-minded people together. Okay, so I'm glad that came up. And Timothy says, yeah, like storytelling with balloon art. Yeah, storytelling with balloon art. And you don't have to tell people you're using memory palaces to do that, but it might be an opportunity at some point to incorporate that, so that then your audiences are like also walking away with better memory of you, and they learned something as a result too. And of course, if you mention Magnetic Memory Method as well, that would be cool also. And there's an idea for you. If you are able to make a testimonial video, MMM in balloons would be awesome. With a magnet or something like that. That would be really amazing to see. So I hope that gives you some ideas. And tell a story along the way. Maybe tell the story of your memory improvement journey. Then we can get it up on YouTube and send that to everybody. And that would be fun. Timothy says, you got it. Awesome. Well, thank you. I look forward to that. And to anybody, one of the amazing things is that on the testimonials page, we've got these videos from people, and I just want to create more and more and more to help to grow this project, to get more and more people involved in this brand of teaching the tradition and sharing the adventure together, and being a community where we share what we're doing and how we're doing it, and guide towards the tradition-based version as opposed to a competitive version. Nothing wrong with the competition stuff, but there's differences, and those differences are deep and profound enough that we really need to understand those differences, and understand that when we train ourselves for competition, that's not necessarily for knowledge, and it's not using the same tools that come from the tradition that enabled people to memorize entire books. In fact, it's quite different. And it's not just the actual tools themselves, but it's the strategy in which the tools are used, and how that they're set up for success so that you can memorize those amounts of information for knowledge. And the other thing too is that it's not just about the art of memory, but it's also about the art of combination. So ars memorativa is the art of memory, and one of the things that is quite lost that I built into the Magnetic Memory Method is ars combinatoria, which is the art of combinations. And that's not talked about at every single step, but it's built in, and there's more to be done in that realm of teaching. But you need to really see that a lot of the trainings that are coming from the competitive-based people, basically the 20th century tradition, is for stunts in public and for competition, and it's great. It's helped thousands and millions of people, really. But by the same token, it's not really fulfilling the promise of these large learning projects. So that's what we're working on doing. And the more help that we can get from the grassroots people who really want those skills, then the better we can get, and the more the help that can be offered, especially in an age where people are bombarded by so much information and not connecting the dots as well as they could, and we can help them. And the more people that are supporting this and behind this, the more we can help, and the greater things can happen to change and solidify what ultimately comes down to each of us surviving and thriving at a higher level. So Sandra says, thank you for another great evening. Excited to try all these exercises this week. Great, Sandra. I look forward to an update from you, and hopefully we'll get a testimonial video from you as well to support this tradition. Bruntiver for Strategy says, last question, what's the biggest memory palace you guys have? I wonder if I should just merge a few instead of making a huge, super huge one. Bruntiver, I would recommend that super huge memory palaces are not recommendable at all. And one of the reasons why is that if you're using the magnetic memory method for what it's designed for, which is long-term retention of knowledge, then what you want to do is you want to use recall rehearsal. The bigger the memory palace, the less doable proper recall rehearsal is for long-term retention. The smaller and more crisp and compact and navigable it is, navigationable, the better you're going to get that stuff done. And you can connect multiple memory palaces so that you virtually have a massive memory palace, but that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be the outcome of the information. And Brunheimer asks, what's the magic number then? Here's the magic number. There is no magic number. Try to avoid magic number thinking. Instead, learn yourself and where you're at, and then improve based on your goals and set the strategy to fit the outcome. The outcome will provide the magic numbers, matched with your level of skill and practice and where you're at and what you're trying to do. Example, let me give you an example. If I wanted to, let's just use cards for brain exercise, since this is a brain exercise stream. When I first started, I needed 52 stations. That's where I was at, because I needed to have a station per card. I wanted to work on that. So then I needed to think, how many cards per station, right? And then I said, well, what's the, I didn't say what's the magic number here, but was there a magic number? Now, it turns out that the actual magic number is 3 to 5. So I can tolerably reduce my amount of stations to 3 cards per station, but I can, in the flash of decision making, decide to add a 4th or 5th card to that station. And so that's relative to practice. Now, that's my practice for my exercise. If I was going to be competing, I would go about things differently, right? And I would then try to have it so that it's 5 cards per station, period, or 3 cards per station, period. Now let's take this to an example with language learning. I just want to memorize 10 new vocabulary words, right, per day, let's say. That's the goal. Now, I then want to be able to add a phrase to each of those 10 vocabulary words. That's also the goal. So now what we need to do is create the strategy around that. Now I can tell you that 10 stations for me is good, but it wasn't always that way. So I need to build a memory palace station, or a memory palace that has at least 15 stations to compensate for bleed over, right? Because not every phrase is going to fit cleanly that way. And then I need to have different things as like, okay, so we're going to have to combine, we're going to have to make sentences that has words from station 1 and station 2 and so forth, and wrap them into, in other words, a sentence that has both words, and so on and so on. So everything really comes down to not a magic number, but you developing the magic of understanding yourself, where you're at, where you want to go, and creating the system that supports those outcomes. And there's no magic number. So always be creating more memory palaces, always be using those memory palaces, and always be using them towards goals, and also just have some redundancy, some memory palaces as such. And you say, I see, because I made a 150 location memory palace. It is the house my dad owns, it's very big. I needed 150 items to remember in the forward journey. Great, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But see if for future goals, you could, for example, come up with different strategies. I mean, you can go through the master plan. We talk about some different strategies you might need. If you're able to handle 150 stations, then, you know, make more and then see how that works out and pans out for future things. Reuse the one that you've got. You know, you might ask yourself, is this really 150 location memory palace? Or is it that it is already segmented? This room has 4, this room has 6, this room has 10, etc. And see to the extent to which you may already be using it in a segmented fashion. And then just think of the outcomes and the goals and the strategies. Flexibility is really what this art is about. But also knowing your need for absolute strategy. So there are things that absolutely have to be fixed, and there are things that absolutely don't need that fixity, and in fact need the flexibility. So just work to identify what that is for you, and learn what works for, as Reclaiming Life William is saying here, learn what works best for you at any given time, so that it's dynamic and not static. Great, William, perfect. I obviously was not putting it that way myself, and so you put it better, and I appreciate it very much. And Reclaiming Life says, I don't understand why people would want to compete. The acquisition of knowledge means more to me than speed. Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. And then the beauty of it is you end up getting more speed than you'd ever want anyway, because of what's called the accretion of value. Accretion is a fancy word for the accumulation, if you don't know it. And you're getting compound value, compound interest. The more you learn, the more you can learn, because you make more connections. And then you get more autopilot connections. And then you just pay the debt of never being too sure. Don't be too sure, don't be too sure, don't be too sure, as I often say. So often the time that you think, oh, I'll remember that, right, is the time when you needed to do the due diligence just a little bit more, right? That happens to me all the time. It's just like, yeah, I'll remember that. And then that's the time that I don't, right? So due diligence is really, really important. So Brunheimer says, it is segmented. Great. And thank you for your advice. Well, thank you for raising that, because there is really no mega memory palace. Memory palaces must always be segmented. It's just, are you aware of the segmentation, and are you using the segmentation strategically? There's an episode on the podcast with Brad Zupp where he talks about his memory palaces, and his segmentation is really interesting. So look that up. It's magneticmemorymethod.com/passwords/manager. Flora is here. Thanks for saying hello. Have you heard of Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning? Yeah, I mean, good book. It's not exactly what we're talking about, but definitely the more fuel that you have, the better. But as we learned with Maricela earlier, if you're going to learn something, learn that thing from beginning to end before adding something else, because you want to move progressively and with a completion rate. So that's very important, and Make It Stick is well worth anybody's time, but timing matters. And that's one of the things that we do to ourselves, is we sometimes place barriers in our path at the moment we need to be moving forward with focus on the one thing. And so one of the best things you can do is go and take a course from beginning to end. And if you've joined us now and you haven't taken the free course that we offer at magneticmemorymethod.com, go there now and get registered. You can go to magneticmemorymethod.com and you'll see the opportunity there. Just click free course in the menu bar, or you can go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, and that just really is the same path, a different path to the same thing. And really appreciate everybody doing that. And I'll be updating this video later with some links down below in order for you to find your way to some of the resources that we mentioned. Not all of them, but we'll put in the key ones, especially for brain exercises. And just to sum up, the +3 -7 exercise can be just straight up +3 -7, or you can do +3 3 times and -7 7 times. And we also talked about skipping letters of the alphabet, or skipping numbers in meditation. We talked about really using memory palace identification as its own brain exercise. The use of the actual information for Michael Swain made that point very clear. Thanks to Michael for that, of actually using the information you want to learn as brain exercise. And as William says, Reclaiming Life, you can go to magneticmemorymethod.com/snowman. That's right, which is the alternative to 8. So that's good as well. Maybe that's the one we should use. But there's probably a new one coming in 2019, because we do year-long experiments. And oh, Maricella's still here. Maricela says, thanks for all the memory tips. Thank you, Maricela. I always appreciate your comments and questions and participation so much. And back in the day, I used to invite a lot of email, but email is something that I just can't keep up with as well with these days. So it's always good to meet now and to post in the discussions. And we created a forum for you. It's like half launched. So you can go to magneticmemorymethod.com/forum, and that's going to be a way to be more in touch. But again, it's sort of half launched for some of the new things that is coming. We're really always these tech demands and ironing out the kinks and all that sort of stuff. But we're doing all that we can to really create a memory university, and for the international community, and to make it as much like real university as possible. And I have a PhD, so I know a few things about how that should be. And wow, the support is amazing. I appreciate it. I appreciate every minute we spend together and all of the participation and interest. And Timothy says, thanks for the challenge and the brainstorming. Absolutely, my pleasure. And thanks for being a supporter of this work and an engaged student of it and all of the things associated with it. And it's just a great privilege and an honor, and what a wonderful, wonderful thing this is that's in everybody's head. It works for everybody because no brain is so different than the other. And I'm really looking forward to exploring this topic more and more, deeper and deeper as the years accumulate. Brunheimer Forest Strategy says, it was great to join you all. See you again. Yes, thank you for being here. And I think one of the wonderful, amazing opportunities we have is to get to know each other and to get in touch outside and just be in discussion about all these topics and the tools themselves, and pass it on, pay it forward, as they say, and invite others to come and join us through sharing and word of mouth, and this grassroots effort will grow and grow and grow. And I just look forward to doing more and more and more centralized through a combination of the amazing things we can do with the internet to grow the longevity and the survival of this tradition based on the ancient texts and the best of what we know from all of the tradition, all of it come together for accomplishing things like learning languages and understanding philosophy better, remembering more of the specific details, remembering complex information formulas, and all the things that are so challenging and yet benefit us so much when we can just dive in and commit it to memory. So good to see you all. Physico says, my first live and a good one. I'm hoping to be in the next one. Thank you, Physico, for being here. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Get subscribed to this channel if you're new, as we saw here. David, thank you, and Physico for being here. And I'm just scrolling back to see if I remember David's name correctly here. Yes, David. And really appreciate everybody who's new and everyone who's not new. Sandra's here. Thanks again. I enjoy the way you develop the discussion based on the questions and comments. Well, thank you, Sandra. We can only do it when you are here and participating, and you've always been great since the first time that I saw your name, and I always get happy and excited when you are here. So as a last note, my own brain exercise, I'm memorizing a lot of Sanskrit at the moment. Reclaiming Life, William says, choose. I love how some of the German people raise their voice at the end. Choose, tschüssi. I always remember that in Germany. Oh, a beautiful place. Vielen, vielen Dank. It was good to see you. Und bis gleich, bis bald, bis gleich, und alles Gute. So, wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I gotta get my German back on. My mouth has de-skilled. Ich bin nicht mehr so fließend, leider. But yeah, memorizing lots of Sanskrit now, and one of my brain exercises there as a final thing is to memorize it, to recite it in order, to recite it out of order, forwards and backwards, and then also to suppress some of it so that I'm doing it from, let's say, line 1 to 3 to 2 to 4, to 6 to 5 and so forth. And that's just so powerful. The other thing too is that I'm managing the Sanskrit and the English meaning. So it's not just, oh, now I'm mumbling some yada da da da, but it's actually meditating, focusing on what that means. Now I have to give a lot of trust to Gary Weber that Sanskrit actually means what he says that it means, but I've now learned enough of the individual words that I'm just like, yeah, that sounds about right. But it's great brain exercise, and it is the ultimate brain exercise. Why? Because it's self-inquiry questions that cause greater depth of focus and clarity on the thing in the mind that never changes, which is the self. It is the I am that is deeper than name and form, as Eckhart Tolle called it in Stillness Speaks. So I really appreciate you all, and I really feel wonderfully and deeply connected to this community because of you and your interest and your participation. And for those who are still on the sidelines, that's okay. But if you ever want to jump in, dive in. It's a very exciting place to be. So Sandra, or Bruntheimer says to Sandra, yes, Anthony is involved with the discussion, very much appreciated, and I appreciate you. We can't do it unless it's together, and we are all together in this journey. Oh, Timothy says, Megaston typos. Megaston topos hapantagar kori. So you did pretty good. Let me see. Now that you put it there with the different spelling, I've sort of reclaiming life with him says aber goodbye, eh? Yeah. Ich bin fertig, aber immer noch nie fertig. Oh man. Es gibt's immer mehr. Es kommt nie zu Ende. Well, you did try, Timothy. Great. So it's Megaston topos hapantagar kori. Megaston is like Megiston. Topos is like it's related to typography and topography, but probably related to typography. So topos, think of topography, like location, space, right? So the ultimate space. Space is ultimate. Megaston topos hapanta garkori. So I don't know all the meanings of all the words, but generally hapanta is related to containing, right? Because there's another one, hepax legomenon, which is the word that appears once in a text. It appears only once in a text. Anyway, that hapax legomenon is for another day. But anyway, hapanta in this phrase is related to that one. So Megaston topos hapanta kori, and then so space is ultimate because it contains all things. So I'm pretty sure that hapanta is related to the containing of all things, and so forth. And as William here points out, topography, maps of meaning. So everything's weaving together into a beautiful contained sort of thing. But anyway, yeah, Megaston topos hapantagar kori. Good. Keep on doing that. Keep on putting it out there. See, the thing that's so important there is that even when mistakes happen, when you put it out, you build courage, you build confidence, and even if you don't feel like it was particularly courageous, it was. And I do this myself to really develop that and to just let go of outcomes, to practice the letting go of outcomes, but also to then note whatever mistakes made. And the more, and you know this, Timothy says I agree, but you know this with a performance part of the thing is like one of the best things you can do is get over mistakes in public as quickly as possible so you build that thick skin. But also then you know what to do in that situation so you can keep the show going, right? And in my case, turn it into a teaching moment. And so I really appreciate that, and I admire that very much.